Coming up on Over a Barrel, we're seeing news stories this week about how crude oil prices are hitting 11-month highs. So are the falling prices that we're seeing right now a very temporary situation, or...
Great question.
Over a Barrel starts right now. And welcome to Over a Barrel. I'm your co-host, Matt McLean, alongside Patrick DeHaan. And boy, our weekly podcast, we've been busy this week, no question about it. Obviously, putting out a special report earlier this week about prices spiking in the western part of the country. And then in other areas, it seems to be falling. So we've got a lot going on. Hello, Patrick. How are you?
I'm good, Matt. Thanks for all those who tuned in to our special report there. We did have some fireworks out west. And, you know, Matt, I know you and I, actually, my gas station went down 20 cents. So people that are listening or listen to the special report are probably like, hey, what is going on out in the West Coast? You know, California is within arm's reach. In fact, LA is within 20 cents a gallon now of reaching an all-time record high. But we have some good news, so stay tuned for that. But, you know, Matt, it doesn't feel like fall yet. You know, here in Chicago, it's still, 70, 80 degrees. And I think by next week, it's going to be 85 degrees. So summer's here, but we're still on that cheaper winter blend. And that's what's helping prices go down.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on with the weather. It is, I'm about 5 to 6 hours south of you in the Midwest and upper South area. And yeah, it's exactly right. Mid to upper 80s next week. Sunny skies, I'll take that. But it is for moving into October. That's a little unusual. It is a little bit.
Time to get out on the motorcycle and get out and about and enjoy it, right? Especially since I think you said your price down there. I think you said the cheapest price in Kentucky was below $3.
Yeah, $2.99 is what I am seeing as well. That's kind of cool. And
all right, we'll take it. Look at that, Elizabethtown, $2.99 all over the place, and we're starting to see that, Matt. More stations. You know, I've been watching Wisconsin, by the way. Wisconsin's down to $3.11. They're going to get really close. So yeah, we have good news for 43 of the nation's 50 states. And I guess that would mean bad news if you're in Alaska, Hawaii, Oregon, Arizona, the West Coast, right? Washington, Nevada, and California. It's exactly all of the West Coast, Matt, that is going up, but everybody else is going down. Congratulations to Delaware. The biggest week-on-week decline. The average in Delaware down 17 cents a gallon from a week ago. Iowa down 13 cents. Hey, shout out to Florida, down 12 cents in the last week. But on the flip side, Matt, California, up 27 cents. Nevada up 19. So not a great time to be in the West Coast if you're filling your tank.
So let's dive right on into this. Why are some parts of the country really rapidly rising and other parts of the country, I won't say rapidly falling, but it's not exactly at a trickle either. So, I mean, what's going on?
Yeah. Well, we've seen a lot of refining issues out in the West Coast. For the better part of what seemed like 3 to 5 weeks. And looking back a year, Matt, we had this exact same setup a year ago. For those who didn't tune into our special report, there may be some interesting information there, but I'll sum it up as California only has 13 refineries, and they've lost about 10% of their refining capacity over the last 4 years, Matt. And a lot of that's happened because of a conversion. The government, California, had been incentivizing refineries to convert their refineries to produce more renewable product. Well, unfortunately, producing more renewable product generally means that there's less yield, right? Things that are better for the environment are more expensive and it's harder to produce them. So unfortunately, that's part of the reason. But California has been dealing with a lot of both planned maintenance. We know this is the time of year, right? I'm a broken record saying maintenance, but I mean, Matt, you get your car serviced before and after a road trip, maybe. I guess one of two, depending on how long your road trip is. That's kind of what refineries are doing right now.
I know that is certainly an area of, I won't say concern, because isn't this kind of the normal time of year for maintenance to take place across refineries?
Yeah, it really is. Gasoline demand is declining. So the peak of gasoline consumption is behind us in the summer, but in the winter, the demand peak hits heating oil and diesel. So we have two different seasons depending on what you're filling up with. Diesel, the peak generally is in the winter because, like I said, that's the same as heating oil. And for gasoline, it's summer. And that's why refineries have this window in the fall when, both products, gasoline's declining, diesel is starting to pick up in terms of demand. That's why refineries usually schedule their maintenance for fall. Also in the spring. As refineries get ready to go into the summer driving season, they start to do that maintenance. So usually refineries will pick one or the other and they maintain their facilities. Usually every 1 or 2 years, they'll do a larger maintenance period. And then every 3 to 5 years, they'll do larger maintenance projects.
Yeah, speaking of different types of things, and we've been talking about the weather just a touch, we do have a couple of things out of the tropics, but so far there's no steering currents to bring them anywhere close to land. We've got Philip or Philippe, I'm not sure exactly, and what I'm going to hopefully pronounce is Rina. I think that's how you would pronounce it, or Rina, R-I-N-A. We'll let you decide as a listener, but neither of them seem to be very interested in the coastal areas or the Gulf of Mexico as of right now, so it's just almost an honorable mention in our podcast, and then we just kind of move on, huh?
I'm gonna try the third pronunciation and guess Felipe is out there. And I looked at some of the model tracks. It looks like my kindergarten artwork, right, where it's just lines everywhere. I can't stay in the line. So I think both of those hopefully will stay pretty far away. And Matt, we're almost on the doorstep to October here, so let's hope the Atlantic starts to quiet down. But for the rest of us, the trend at the gas pump should be positive. I would think that more areas are going to see declines. By the way, for those keeping track at home, compared to a week ago, 43 states have lower average gas prices than a week ago. And it's those 7 states in the West Coast that are seeing prices go up compared to last week. But Matt, I did get a hat tip from somebody that said the governor had been talking about waivers. I think that's something we talked about. So
it is.
Not only can California, because California has its own mandates. EPA does not regulate California. The CARB, the California Air Resources Board, supersedes the EPA. And there had been some word that CARB was considering a waiver. In fact, I think Governor Newsom in California had made a comment to KNX in Los Angeles that he was preparing to issue waivers or something of that sort. I haven't been able to confirm that just yet. But the good lesson here is that government, including the EPA, including CARB, they can issue waivers, Matt. What a waiver is it simply waives the requirement for more stringent blends of gasoline. And what that does is makes it easier to produce gasoline. And by the way, as we're going into that time when California makes that transition last, by the way, all the rest of the country, most of the areas have already switched to winter gasoline, but CARB delays it because California tends to be warm late into the season. The EPA can issue waivers along with CARB, and they often do that. The EPA often issues waivers in the case of hurricanes. So that's what a waiver is. It basically allows retailers to sell gasoline that can be sold at a later date. It basically just brings up the date that they can switch. And like I said, usually refineries this time of year have quite a bit of winter gasoline already made. So that's why a waiver would help.
Absolutely. Now, we are looking at prices that you mentioned falling in the bulk majority of the U.S. Now, let me throw this out there. We're seeing news stories this week about how crude oil prices are hitting 11-month highs. So are the falling prices that we're seeing right now a very temporary situation, or?
Great question.
I mean, you can only fall so fast with gasoline, considering that is, oil is where it comes from. I mean, so what are we looking at?
That's a terrific question, Matt. It's actually one I've heard, and I'm glad you brought it up because, to your point, the price of oil, has earlier this week we touched, I think, 93. We almost got to 94 yesterday. And so how are gas prices going down when oil may be higher? Well, that's a great question, but a lot of that has to do with the makeup of the winter gasoline now, right? So winter gasoline has a lot more butane in it than summer gasoline. So in fact, summer gasoline has a negligible amount of butane. The reason is butane emits more air pollution. It's more volatile. So low-level ozone concerns in the summer go away when the temperatures cool off. Nobody has seen an ozone action day in the middle of winter because warm temperatures are what create some of that low-level ozone. So butane is plentiful. In some areas of the country, butane sells for less than $1 a gallon. So we're getting the cost savings, Matt, that of the switch to cheap components, and it's offsetting the rise in the price of oil. And we all know gas prices move not just because of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 reasons. There's a lot of things that factor into gas prices. But right now, the savings from butane outweighs the cost increase in the price of oil that we've been seeing. So that's why prices are still going down, and they still have more room to fall, even as oil prices go up.
Wow. Okay. So I did not expect that answer from you, and I've known you for a good many years, and that surprises me. I would have thought you would have said we're coming very close to hitting the basement bottom price here, and we'll start going back up. But you're indicating really no, not necessarily.
Good news. Finally, I'm a guy that can deliver some good news. I'm happy to do it.
I'm pinching myself. Am I dreaming? I don't know what's going on here.
You're gonna wake up and you fall out of the bed. But yeah, it's true. And as we talk here today, by the way, the price of oil is taking a little bit of a break after trying to make a run at $94 yesterday. Matt, we're at about $91.70. We're down $2 a barrel today, which is about 2%. But here's the other interesting thing, Matt. The price of oil is down 2%. But the wholesale price of gasoline, and some people watch this, so I'm going to throw out the quote. It's NYMEX RBOB, which is basically a gallon of gasoline. The price of wholesale gasoline today, Matt, is down by 3.5%. So, the price of oil down 2%. What's going on with gasoline? Well, it's interesting because the price of oil and gasoline generally move close to in tandem. But that difference, why is gasoline falling more? The difference between the two in that relationship is governed by what we call the crack spread. We've talked about it before. Basically, what the crack spread is, it's the profit or the margin that a refinery gets for taking a barrel of crude oil and cracking it into various products like gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. And right now, the crack spread is among the lower it's been for several months, which means that there's less incentive for refineries to produce as much because they're less profitable. And that's generally what happens in the fall because demand goes down. So the margin also goes down. And that's also, Matt, why refineries do maintenance in the fall, because there's less profit when demand is lower. And when demand is higher in the summer, refineries don't want to be doing work. That's like Apple, right? After they release an iPhone, they're not doing maintenance at factories. Those factories are producing as many iPhones as they can.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so I have another quick question for you, and I think it's one that you'll be able to answer. And I think most of the people listening will find this quite interesting. So my question to you is this. Plastic is a derivative of oil, I think, is one of those things that not a lot of folks may fully understand that. So it doesn't matter if it's a little baggie that you put food in or if it's, like
makeup.
Plastic makeup. Yeah. So my question to you is, do these refineries that we're constantly talking about in our podcast here in Over a Barrel, do they have anything to do with that? In other words, do they refine raw products that get sent off that help make plastic, or is that like a totally different refinery or a totally different situation?
Mm-hmm. Well, crude oil is a source of feedstock for making plastic-based products, but crude oil is not a major source of the feedstock for plastics production. That is, plastics, of course, contain things like petroleum, but plastics are generally produced more from natural gas and feedstocks derived from processing of natural gas and from refinery byproducts derived from the refining of crude oil. So yes, refining generally contributes a lot of those feedstocks over to making plastics. So that's essentially the basic blocks of making plastic are other oils that come out of that barrel of crude oil. So while we talk about refineries and we talk about gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, we only talk about those three things because they're the number 1, 2, and 3 most consumed things from that barrel of oil. But yes, absolutely. The other important factor is that plastics are coming out of that refining process as well. In fact, Matt, if we went through it, there is a lot that comes out of a refinery.
That's exactly what I was actually trying to get at there. I mean, I don't think a lot of folks possibly fully appreciate what. And
keep in mind that road you drive on, by the way, is a lot of times asphalt that comes out of refinery, petroleum coke. There's waxes. Think about your Crayola crayons and so on and so forth. A lot of those waxes come out of refining and things like petroleum jelly, right? There's a lot of different things. Liquefied petroleum gases, what we call LPG, comes out of refining. There's a lot. And Matt, keep in mind, this is not 1920 anymore. By the way, based on the early days of refining, they were after whale oil, to keep the lamps lit. And actually, before there was a big market for some of these products like gasoline, they used to dump it. They used to dump gasoline because it wasn't what they wanted.
Really?
So,
that surprises me.
Yeah. The early days of refining are filled with stories about how in the early days when they didn't need some of those byproducts, they got rid of them.
Huh. Well, that is certainly that is also something I did not expect. You're kind of full of surprises today. I'm not going to lie. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of companies were dumping gasoline in rivers. I mean, you look at why the Clean Air Act and Environmental Protection Agency came to life, and a lot of it was because, Matt, we had a lot of really terrible practices because they didn't know how to get rid of things, But now, basically, everything that's coming out of a refinery is utilized in one way or another.
Yeah, and that's also, I think, fairly important to bring out there. So, I mean, there's a lot of different aspects. Taking, for example, a lot of electric companies, when they generate power, they use natural gas to do that. Yeah.
And by the way, what I meant is when we switched from whale oil to kerosene, they would dump the gasoline. So I think I misspoke there and suggested that, whale oil is obviously whale oil, but when they made the change to whale oil to kerosene lamps before modern light bulbs, they would dump out the byproduct. And like I said, gasoline was a byproduct of getting kerosene. But of course, now kerosene, oftentimes that kerosene, that's jet fuel now, kerosene-based jet fuel. So there was a lot of that. And by the way, the first light bulb, what wasn't it, like I think it was 1879, that then we didn't have any lamps. By the way, the first refinery was financed in the 1860s. Matt, by the way, I'm outside Chicago. That large BP refinery in Whiting that I love to go visit, by the way, and drive by it, that was built in the 1880s.
Ah, okay. Yeah. And the first light bulb, by the way, was in 1879. So you were
okay. It was. Close. Yeah. So around the same time. And before that we had kerosene based lamps. And before that we had whale oil based lamps, right? You'd go out, you'd go hunt for whales for whale oil because that burned. And then we changed to kerosene. And then of course we had light bulbs, and now we have LEDs.
Yeah. LEDs certainly made some lasting changes, I think, on how we light our homes for sure. And so there's a lot of inventive creativity is the best way that I know how to place that out there, including even fuel efficiency in vehicles and all of those aspects to kind of stretch that gallon of fuel, so to speak. So the price point that we are looking at now, I am seeing oil prices currently, $91, $92 a barrel. Yeah. Brent is at about $95 a barrel. Back to that original question, we are seeing stories out there. I've seen one this week that indicated $100 or $150 a barrel was what we were marching toward. What is your assessment of all of that?
$300 oil is a story I saw earlier this week, and
gosh,
those stories, Matt. By the way, a lot of these tend to be a little bit of clickbait, and all of our listeners know that I can't stand all the BS because oftentimes, Matt, it's not the people that are most sensible that are making news. It's the people that say really extreme stuff, whether it's $300 oil or $150 oil, because that's what people are freaked out. They click the article. So I'm glad you brought that up because, I think $100 oil is a possibility here. I mean, we've touched $94 a couple of days ago. And the reason that I think $100 oil, Matt, may happen, and it may not happen this year, but I'm worried that it could happen next year because keep in mind, if OPEC, which has been tightening and limiting production, continues to stay the course, well, the problem is, Matt, when the economy grows, we consume more product. And there's been a slowdown in trucking and logistics. The U.S. economy has been slowed by the rise in interest rates. So if we start, the conventional wisdom has said that potentially interest rates might start to decline next year. And now I think that that's probably even further delayed down the road. But when the economy does start to heat back up, the problem is with these production cuts from Russia and Saudi Arabia that global oil inventories continue to slowly decline. And if we start to see an economy that heats up next year, there's going to be big problems with global inventories that are extremely tight. And that could push oil above $100. Now, I don't think we're going to get to 150, Matt, because it's also not in OPEC's interest to drive people away from using oil, because now more than ever, people can get EVs, they can bike, there's other forms of energy. There's work from home. So OPEC and Russia and Saudi Arabia don't want oil prices to get too high, because then they essentially shoot themselves in the foot, because people are no longer interested in having to fill up a car. So I think that's why $150 oil, and it's not impossible, right? If there is some certain event, I'm not thinking one of in my mind, but if there's a particular event, an abrupt event, like turmoil related, that you could see $150 oil, but I think $100 is sensible. I don't think much above that, Matt. Maybe $105 or $110 a barrel. What I'm worried more about than the price of oil is what we're dealing with right now in Southern California, Matt, and that is refinery constraints. The fact that next spring, if we get some refinery outages and we get the higher price of oil, we could see gas prices jumping again next spring. I mean, it's obviously too early to tell, but $300 oil, I don't even click those articles. That's just some opinion. It's some hype. $150 oil, I think that's on the extreme side of things. Is it possible? Yes. Is the likelihood extremely low? Yes. The odds might be 1 in 1,000. Probably even lower than that, but it is possible. But I think $100 and $110, Matt, is a little bit more realistic.
So whenever let me back up. If we were, not whenever, but if we get to that price point, what does that look like for the consumer at the gas pump as far as prices go?
Well, because oil is not the only factor in gasoline, it varies, Matt. If we hit $110 a barrel this winter, it might not mean much. But if we hit $110 a barrel next spring, when refiners are also doing maintenance, then it could be more problematic. So, people have often asked, $1 a barrel increase in the price of oil, what does that translate to? Well, if you do $1 divided by 42 gallons, because that's 42 gallons in a barrel, that's about 2.4 cents per gallon. But again, at maybe 2.4 cents per gallon. So by the way, if oil goes up $1 a barrel, that would translate to a 2.4 cent increase in the price of gasoline. But that relationship can vary because, like I said, oil is not the only factor guiding prices higher. The problem could be that if in the summer, that blend of gasoline, right? I said there's a lot of cheap butane in winter gasoline, but summer gasoline, the butane comes out and you have more expensive, cleaner burning components. So if that happens at the same time as you have $100 oil, it's going to be like a double whammy. So oil going up to $100 a barrel in the winter might look like a national average of $3.50, but in the summer, $100 oil could mean a closer to a $4 a gallon national average. So I like to give people the information that it does vary. When we hit $100, is it $100 a barrel in the winter, or is it $100 a barrel in the spring? Because the two could be 50 cents a gallon apart in the impact on gas prices.
And you're right. Saudi Arabia and the Middle East do need that oil to keep their economies running as well, as far as the ability to sell. And, we've talked multiple times on this podcast about the, I guess, intentional manipulation of the price to try to drive the price up. And that, I guess, is probably not putting words in their mouths. That's essentially what they're trying to do is get that price point up. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, they're a cartel, Matt. The biggest difference, by the way, and I'd like to highlight this, thank you for bringing this up, is that Saudi Arabia and many of these OPEC producers, Matt, they are not privatized companies like we have here in the United States. There is a huge difference. When you hear of an oil company in the United States, the government does not tell the oil company, you must produce this or you must cut this, right? America, freedom. Oil companies can decide based on economics if they want to raise output or lower it. This is not a government decision. The president does not direct them. However, oil companies in other countries like Saudi Arabia, Saudi Aramco is controlled by the state. That is, the Saudi leader, MBS, or the oil minister, is directing the state-owned oil company to ramp up production or cut production. So that's a huge difference, Matt, is that, yes, these countries have state-owned oil companies, and the oil companies in these other countries are directed by the country. And Canada and the U.S., oil companies are not told what to do by the government. So there's a big difference there.
Yeah, that's something that I don't know that a lot of people really truly stop to go that full circle in their mind. We approach it from the perspective of what we are used to, which is, that capitalist kind of mindset where,
Exactly.
Insert brand name here as far as gasoline or refinery, they get to do their own thing. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. Plus, Saudi Arabia needs all the oil money to pay for that brand new linear city that they're building called the Line as well.
They have a lot of bills. I mean, hey, they've tried to chase how many different sporting leagues, and the sovereign investment fund likes to pay billions of dollars to athletes. So, but Matt, to your point, there's a fine line, because if people start switching over to EVs, suddenly the Saudi economy will be faltering. So again, to the point that the Saudis actually don't want it too high either. You might think they do, but $200 oil would hurt the Saudis in the long term, because it would very quickly give a lot of people, not just U.S. Residents, not just U.S. Citizens, Americans, whatever. It is going to give a lot of incentive to everyone around the globe, especially in China too. That's a big emerging market, to go to electric vehicles, and that's what they don't want.
Yeah, it's impressive to really stop and think about those particular things. Now, you're saying that they don't want the price to climb obviously too high. Would they be satisfied with that $100 mark on a price per barrel?
Oh, very much so. I think they're really happy with where the market is now, but they obviously can't really convey that to the market. I mean, I think, it's worth monitoring. But yeah, I think the Saudis, their whole goal was to boost oil to $80, $85 a barrel. Now, it's 92 to 94 in the last week or so. So I think they're pretty happy. But the fact that oil is higher may give them ideas on, hey, let's nudge it a little higher. Let's make some comments here or there. So keep an eye on that. But again, just because oil goes up another few dollars does not necessarily mean it's going to have a direct and immediate impact on what you're paying at the pump. So that's the good news.
That's always good to know as well. So from this point forward, we're just simply kind of looking at the concept and the idea that our gas prices really for the next week or two, you're kind of thinking if the prices are going up, say, in the west coast of our country, they might, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, please speak to this, but they might go up a few more cents over the next week or two. But if it's falling in your neck of the woods, it's probably going to fall a little bit more. Correct me.
I'll cover it here. You're mostly correct here in that. Yeah, I think for the bulk of the nation, you're going to see gas prices that are trending lower. There are some areas, Matt, like the Great Lakes, Michigan, for example, saw prices cycle today. And my hometown is in Grand Rapids in West Michigan, and their prices just shot up today to $3.79. But there are markets, Matt, in the Great Lakes that actually routinely go up, even if oil prices are going down. We call those markets price cycling markets, where prices cycle. Florida is one of those. Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin. So those markets are a little harder to explain. But the rest of the country is going to see a gradual and slow decline in prices, whereas the Great Lakes tends to move a little quicker to the downside, but then they correct by going up, and then they go right back down again. So, and Matt, good news for our West Coast listeners as well. I think we're going to see some light at the end of the tunnel. I would say, and by the way, I have my screen here in front of me. I see a lot of red, which is good. That means the wholesale price is declining. And by the way, today it's declining in every region of the country. But for our West Coast friends, it looks like there may be some light at the end of this whole refining mess tunnel. I would hope that maybe by next week, mid to late next week, gas prices start to decline in the West Coast. And again, that's subject to change because a refinery issue could happen. But I would say, Matt, by mid-October, I think pretty solidly everyone should be trending lower at the pump. And for diesel, the opposite.
So if you're looking for the idea of, maybe taking a quick trip, if you have that option for some vacation, as far as fuel prices go, the next couple of months may not be a terrible idea.
Yeah. If you want to go on the fall foliage tour,
there you go.
It's shaping up rather nicely, especially in your neck of the woods. The fall does not happen here in Chicago until really mid to late October, because we're so close to Lake Michigan, which is still pretty warm. So those inland areas generally change color. It's interesting, Matt. By the way, no more season that's beautiful than fall. I think I'm a 4-season fan. I don't know about you.
I lived in Tampa for a really long time. And,
so you had 2 seasons, warm season, and I can actually get outside and not sweat season.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's exactly right. Now, originally I'm from the St. Louis area, so the Ozark Mountains and stuff. Yeah, all 4 seasons, sometimes in one day. But that's a whole other story. I can't recommend enough the Ozark Mountains in the fall. I think it is one of those off the radar for a lot of folks. But and listen, I know Maine is gorgeous at this time of year. New Hampshire, Vermont, by all means. But I'll throw
Pure Michigan, baby. Pure
Michigan as well, right? But I'll also throw out the Ozark Mountains in the fall as being some of the most spectacular colors that you will probably ever see. It's just unbelievable.
Well, and with gas prices going down, it's even more unbelievable.
Yep, that's what I'm saying. So if you have the ability, maybe we can talk the guys upstairs into letting us take another trip or something.
That'd be beautiful.
Right? We'll go on a little fall foliage trip, and we'll take photos and send postcards. It'll be
that's right. By the way, anyone taking those trips, make sure to pack the Gas Buddy app because prices are going down. I notice a lot of folks on the West Coast seem to be stubborn in that they like to go to the same stations. And down the road, I've seen this too many times in the last week, Matt, where people are like, oh, the station in Beverly Hills was $7.39 a gallon. And then all these other social media folks are like, check Gas Buddy because the Costco 2 miles away is $5.59. And it's like, who's paying $7.39 a gallon? And there's still people there. So anyone going out for those fall color tours, check the Gas Buddy app. Of course, it only takes 10 or 15 seconds. If you don't have it already, Matt, I'm going to say I love my Pay with Gas Buddy card. I have the premium edition. I think you do too now, and you save at least a guaranteed 20 cents a gallon. Up to 50 gallons a month, and I get roadside assistance. So if the car decides that it's going to stop and take a longer look at the mountains and the beautiful views, I can get help for that too.
I almost fell out of my chair when you said $7.39. I just did the quick math at 15 gallons in my tank for my SUV. That's $111, almost $111.
That gas pump would be clicking off before you could actually fill your tank up. And I think that's, hashtag West Coast problems.
Yeah. That's a problem. That makes me. I almost broke out in a cold sweat. I've lost where am I? I'm kind of having a tunnel.
Who am I? Why am I here?
Yeah, where am I? What's going on? That's a lot of money for a 15-gallon tank.
It's the year 2100. Gas is now $9 a gallon. Well, let's hope not. But anyone heading out on the road, it is a beautiful time. To Matt's point, get out, see the now the gas prices are declining. You know what? I always had a great trip up to Northern Michigan, Matt, and Northern Michigan. That's why I said. By the way, hashtag Pure Michigan. I always go to the UP. I'm not this year, sadly, to check out what's going on. But it reminds me of the inside of convenience stores because I could never for the life of finding me. But some of these convenience stores in these rural areas, I walked in and they had just the most amazing, like fresh, refrigerated jerky. I have nothing against jerky. I do tend to like refrigerated jerky and pickles because I tend to think that they're fresher. And hopefully there's some pickle fans out there that know that canned pickles are a little different than refrigerated, but check out the inside of convenience stores because now more than ever, Matt, I go into a convenience store and it's like, whoa. I mean, they might have roller dogs, but there's some really delicious items in these convenience stores to check out.
Oh, I know. There's one chain here in this region. They're now selling Cuban sandwiches, and don't think I haven't tried those already because I got hooked on those when I was living in Tampa. So
now I'm hungry.
Exactly.
And some of these convenience stores now, Matt. By the way, I saw a gas station that had not only pizza inside, but it was like a little tasting room for a brewery. Like they had like 8 or 10 tap handles. That's a dangerous combination. I do not recommend having a beer and then driving, but. These C-stores, Matt, have become more of a destination. And it's like, it's hard not to go in and spend a few minutes. It's like, I do want to get to my destination, especially if you're going on one of those fall foliage tours. You don't spend the tour in the gas station. But while you're there, take some snacks for the road because, man, are they delicious.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, that's pretty much going to wrap up our time for this edition.
Now that I'm thinking about beef jerky, well, for those of want to get a hold of you and I, they can do so at Over a Barrel Show on Twitter. Of course, we are on Facebook now, facebook.com/Over a Barrel Show. Matt, it's been a great time spending another week with you. If they want to reach you, you are at Over a Barrel Matt. And of course, I'm a Gas Buddy guy, Matt. We should probably start planning one of those fall color tours the more I think about it. But for now, hopefully everyone out there travels safe. Check the Gas Buddy app if you're lucky enough to take a tour. We'll see you right here next time.